when we are educated. So let's talk about it. The term man. What does that mean? I know. I came here and you expected me to do all the talking. I know. We're going to be a little more interactive, if that's okay with you guys. What is a man? What do we think? Brothers, sisters, jump out there. 30,000 feet. Don't worry about it. Jump out there. If it looks like you're going to fall, don't worry about it. I'll catch you. Yes, please.
Man is mine, provider, maintainer, you know.
Okay. Provider, maintainer. Okay, good. The rest of us say?
A man should be a leader.
A man should be a leader. Okay. Anyone else? What does it say? Yes, please. A person who? Okay, we'll go with it. We'll go with it. Okay. Interestingly, a scholar by the name of Al-Fairuzabadi, he mentions in defining this term, and he happens to be one of the teachers of another renowned scholar by the name of Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, may Allah bestow mercy on both of their souls. He mentions that الرجل, a man, is a man إذا احتلم وشب, that a man becomes a man when he becomes pubescent and he enters into his state of strength. He also mentions something else, and we'll mention it, we'll leave some clues, but we're mentioning it because he mentioned it. He also mentions that a man is one who is kathir al-jima'. He mentions that a man is one who frequently has intimacy. I'm trying to use words that lack as much color as possible, but color it. So that's the term for a man. A risk, provision. What does that mean? What do we think? Yes? I thought I heard a voice. What do we say? Provision. What is it?
Substance that you live,
Sustenance that you can
live by.
Sustenance that you can live with and live by. Good. Let's build on that. Anyone else?
Food, clothing, shelter.
Food, clothing, and shelter. Okay. Money. Basic necessities. Okay. Risk or provision, it is كل ما أنعم الله على عباده. It is everything that Allah has blessed His servants with, min ni'mihi, from His blessings, from His bounties. سواء مادية أو معنوية, regardless if it is material or non-material. That's what provisions are. Okay, good. Third term, ilm, knowledge. What is that?
Information that benefits.
Information that benefits. The rest of us say?
What Allah and His Messenger said.
What Allah and His Messenger has said. Good. We're all right. We can keep being right. Anyone else?
Direction and guidance.
Direction and guidance. Good, good, good. I can't see the whole pen. Is that an expensive pen? No? Can I borrow it for a second? It's okay?
Yes.
Okay. We're going to use this pen to define knowledge. Knowledge, it is إدراك الشيء على ما هو عليه إدراك جازما. It is to perceive a thing adamantly in accordance with its reality. Now, all of that sounds like a lot of technical jargon, so let's break that into smaller pieces, all right? Just because you perceive a thing to be a certain way, doesn't mean the reality of that thing is the same? Not necessarily. So perception and reality can be different. Good. Okay. When we perceive something, sometimes we're sure about what we perceive, and sometimes we perceive something and we're not as sure about what we perceive. Yes or no? Okay. Now, can you perceive something, be certain about your perception, and it still contrasts with reality?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, good. We're almost there. So when you perceive a thing adamantly, you don't have doubt about it, and your perception matches reality, that's ilm. That's knowledge. Okay. Demonstration. This is a pen. Okay. We're holding the pen up. So you know? Yes. No, yes, what? It happened already.
No, it hasn't happened, but the reality of it is that you let that thing go, it will fall. Yes.
Okay. The reality will be that if we let this pen go, it will fall.
Right.
You're saying you're sure about it.
Sure.
So you're adamant in your perception.
Based on the laws of gravity.
Based on the laws of gravity. Okay, good. That, from the standpoint of physics, some of that is still theoretical. Okay? Good. So, in our current reality, in our present, has this pen dropped?
No.
No. But you're certain in your perception that it will fall. Okay, so that's adamant perception. Yes? We let the pen go? Okay, see, Hassan is right. Okay, it dropped. So now our adamant perception match reality. So then you had knowledge of the event.
No, mashallah.
Okay? Good. So now that we're done speaking about terms, we're going to go back. Our terms are man, provision, and knowledge. Topic of our discussion is the art of manliness, provision, and education. Interestingly, when we speak to the definition of a man that we just shared, we said that a man is a man when the male becomes pubescent and enters into his state of strength. Right? Because there's a period when a man starts to come into a state of strength. We understand what we're talking about. Good. That is interesting because from the standpoint of Islam, adulthood begins with puberty. In the Western world, and the way that all of us have been raised, we have this period of time between childhood and adulthood that we call the teenage years, adolescence. Good. Adolescence is from when to when?
From 12 to 21. Or 18.
12 to 21, we hear a, keep going. 13 to 18. Okay. Well, interestingly, from the standpoint of psychology, you can mark that from about 10 to 19. Okay? Which is called adolescence. Now, the primary marker for most is 18. Okay? Interestingly enough, psychologists have created a theory. The theory that they've created is something called deferred adolescence, where the state of adolescence was meant to be from 10 to 18 or 10 to 19. But it seems as though the way that our society is today, it's being delayed. And that theory is delayed, some will state to 23. Others have even stated as late as 25. Delayed adolescence. And many psychologists are now saying that this theory is no longer theory, but it is now a reality. Okay. We're saying that so we can understand the mindset of the society that we're in. But from the standpoint of our faith practice, adolescence, as we call it, doesn't necessarily exist within our law. Now, from the standpoint of Islam, what is it that shifts when the person enters into a state of puberty? What is the change with regards to Islam? Responsibility, yes.
Separation.
Salah, responsibility, salah, keep going.
Separation.
Separation.
Accountability.
Accountability, good. Responsibility, accountability of what and with whom?
Responsible for your religion and accountable to Allah.
Accountable to Allah. Okay. So we have a term for this. This term is called mukallaf. Okay? So when in Islam, when a person enters into a state of puberty, becomes pubescent, this person is now mukallaf, meaning that this person is now responsible in front of Allah for his or her soul. Okay? And this is now bringing us into adulthood. Okay? Now, we're familiar with the fact that the Lord has stated, الرِّجَالُ قَوَّامُونَ عَلَى النِّسَاءِ, that men are responsible for women. بما فضل الله بعضهم على بعض وبما أنفقوا من أموالهم. Men are responsible for women because of a favor that Allah has given to some of them over others, and due to what they spend of their wealth. Okay. So this idea of being responsible, it includes providing. And there are many areas to responsibility, some of which you all have mentioned. We mentioned protection, we mentioned leadership. We can't talk about all of it today, but we can at least open the discussion. And we're going to focus on two areas of that. So when we speak to provision and connecting the responsibility of provision to manliness, what does that look like? What does that look like? These provisions, they come from where? Come from Allah. Good. Inna Allaha huwa razaq bil quwwati al-mateen. And certainly Allah, He is al-razaq, He is the provider, and He is the one who possesses firm strength. Okay. So in provision, there's strength. So then we must understand, when we're speaking to provision as a quality of a man, then this man must seek provision from the one who provides, who is Ar-Razaq. Okay. Keep going. So we now know the source of provision, and we know where the man is seeking his provision from. What does that look like? What does that look like on the ground? How does that kind of roll out? Obedience to Allah.
Calling and supplicating to His Lord.
Calling and supplicating to Allah. All correct. Keep going.
Working.
Working. That's right. Go ahead.
I was going to say taking the actions that fit what it is you're asking for.
Taking the actions that fit what you're asking for. Well, that sounds something like tawakkul. That sounds like placing our trust and reliance upon Allah. You know, the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentions لو إنكم توكلون على الله حق توكله لرزقكم كما يرزق الطير تغدو خماصا وتروح بطانا. If you all relied upon Allah whilst giving him his right over you and placing your trust in him, then he will provide, we're speaking about provisions, he will provide for you the same way he provides for a bird. Every day, the bird leaves its nest with an empty stomach. Yet every day, the bird returns back full. Okay. So we're certain that Allah provides. Do we have doubt in that? We don't doubt that. Okay. Good. So we have adamant perception, and that is a reality. Yes? So we have knowledge that Allah is a provider. We're not doubting that. Okay. So then in this equation that comes in this prophetic tradition, if we already know that Allah is providing, and we already know that we are seeking provisions, then if we're not seeing things roll out the way that we think they should be rolling out, maybe the part of the equation that is missing is tawakkul, placing our trust and reliance upon Allah. Not just doing that, doing it the way the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said so, whilst giving him his due right of placing our trust in him. Okay. So let's talk about this. In this prophetic tradition, when the bird leaves out of its nest in the morning, do we think that the bird knows exactly where its provisions are going to be? So then, the bird has certainty though.
Right.
What is the bird doing? The bird searches. So the bird works. The bird takes on the qualities that it should have in order to achieve its goal. So it searches and it works whilst having certainty that it's going to get it, that it will be provided for, even though the bird doesn't know exactly where it's going to be. The bird trusts that Allah knows and that Allah will place the bird in the path of its provisions. So now when the bird does this, even though the bird experiences hunger at the time that it's searching, the bird does this and it comes back full. Is its provision the same exact thing every single time? Or does Allah provide different things for it? Allah knows best. Maybe the same, maybe different. Allah gives it what it needs. Let's expand out this thought. For every bird that exists, is Allah provided the same thing for every single bird that exists? No, yet they're all provided for. Okay, good. So then, we are all meant to be searching and working, putting forth the effort to attain provision, having certainty, even though we may be hungry in the moment, that provision will come by the end of the day. Okay? And the end of the day here is figurative. End of the day may be end of the month, maybe the end of the year, maybe the end of the program that you're in your studies. Whatever it is, but it's there. Okay. When we speak to this concept of provision, we're going to mention a brief story. It's a narration that comes in Al-Bayhaqi. Allah's no mercy upon us. The narrator here is Al-Hakam ibn Abul As. He speaks about an occurrence and an experience that he had with Umar ibn al-Khattab. May Allah be pleased with him. And he mentions that one time Umar, may Allah be pleased with him, came upon him. And he asked him a question. He asked him, do you indulge in trade? Do you do business? You do trade? You do commerce? He responded and said yes. Now, Umar must have thought that he did because he asked a question. But he said yes, answer this question. Umar then says to him, I have the wealth of an orphan that is depleting every year because of zakat, because of paying the annual almsgiving on the wealth that this orphan has. I want to give you the wealth of this orphan so that you can increase it. So he then gave him 10,000 of their money at the time. And then he didn't see Umar for a while. Just trusted him with it, gave it to him. All right, this is what you do. You're the money guy, you're the business guy. Okay, left it with him. He didn't see him for a while. And then eventually, when they reconnected, he gave him back 100,000. So he 10x'd the money that he gave. We're stating this because in the way that we interact with our provisions, we are meant to be interacting with our provisions in such a way that whatever we do have, we're looking for ways to make it grow. Okay? And there are ways that this is done, and there are examples of this, but from the onset of it, it's a mindset. So we're going to take some examples of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We know that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Muslims during what we call the Meccan period, they experienced hardship, they experienced persecution. Yes, no? We're familiar. They needed to solve for that challenge. So one of the solutions was, after political maneuvering wasn't as profitable as they wanted it to be at that time, they then opted to move to another place. The first place that they opted to move to, for those that were able to make that move, was where? Good, they went to Africa, right? Abyssinia. Okay, ancient Ethiopia, as it were. Okay, good. That was the first time. The second time they made a move, where did they go? That was the third time.
Yes. That was the third time.
Second time was also to Africa.
Back to Africa.
Also to Africa, okay? Eastern Africa there, okay? Abyssinia, as you state, or Habasha. The third time, they moved to Medina. And when the move to Medina was made, there are certain things that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did as an example for us when it comes to provision. What are some of the first things that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did when he immigrated into Medina? Immigration here with the knee. What do you think?
He made those who migrated partners with those who were already there.
Good. So he made those who migrated to Medina partners with those who are already the residents of Medina. That's correct. To the extent that initially, to show you how far that tie went, that when one of them died, then the other will receive from their inheritance for a period of time until that was abrogated. Okay, good. Keep going. What else happened? What are some of the first things the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did? He built the masjid, true. On what?
Land.
On land. Right. That he got from where? Land that he purchased from Sahel and Suhail. Good. So one of the first things that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did, talking about provision, the art of manliness, he bought land. Real estate. Yes or no? So he bought the land, and then he began building on it. And we know that he built the masjid that we call the Prophet's Masjid, or Masjid al-Nabawi, yes? But he also did something else. He built his homes for his family. So he owned land, he built his home, and he owned his home. Okay? There's something else that historians mention, some historians mention, that isn't quite as frequented as what we just stated. Now, we know when the Messenger of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is coming into Medina, he is coming in as the political leader of Medina, as the governor over Medina. Yes? Okay. And this is the establishment of the Islamic State. Yes, no? Okay. As a part of his agreement to become the political leader of Medina, he also had majority share in the gold market and the date market of Medina. That was part of the agreement. Okay? So the things that are happening for the Muslims there in Medina, they're not happening out of thin air. There was an economic base that was built. I'll give you another example. Now, the Muslims have been persecuted, and Muslims even lost their lives due to the aggressions of the non-Muslims at that time. And the first person to lose life because of having Islam as a faith was who? Sumayya. May Allah be pleased with him. Okay. So now the Muslims have to defend themselves now that they're in a state of strength. They can't just allow the aggression to continue. They have to do something about it. So they begin defending themselves. And then we have the different battles that take place in conquests, that take place in expeditions, that take place. Okay, good. When one of these battles would take place and the Muslims were victorious, there's something else that happened after the victory. What do you think that was?
Line up the treasure.
He said, line up the treasures. Right, there were spoils that were there. Yes? Okay. Of those spoils, who did the spoils go to first? The Messenger of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. How much? 20%. Off the top. Went to him. So then the Messenger of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, as a human being and as a man, he actually wasn't poor. He actually had wealth. He had real wealth. And there's a difference between riches and wealth. Riches, that can be measured in, let's just say, money. Wealth is measured in time. Okay? So you have money, you have a certain amount, we're going to call you rich. But you can blow it, and now you're not rich anymore. Wealth is whatever you have right now. If you stop doing whatever you did to attain it, how long would it last before it runs out? That's wealth. Okay? And we're all in different spaces on how long that'll last. Right? They say the average American can't survive but for a month. 2 weeks, some say. Right? Depending on where we're at. Okay? Wealth. Even though salaries may be what they are, the average American is still living the same way with regards to wealth. Okay. So then I think we're getting what we're getting at with regards to provision and what it is and how the Messenger of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was with regards to that. Now, the Messenger of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, with the wealth that he had and with him being the provider that he was, He gave all of it up for the sake of Islam, for the sake of the Muslims. He invested all of it into Islam, into society, and into the future, so that you and I can be sitting here today knowing how to pray and speaking about him. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Okay, we're going to take another jump here. So we spoke about what a man is. We spoke about provisions. We now have to speak to this matter of education before we close. What is the first order to ever have been revealed in the Quran? Good. Read. Okay. And please, if I go too far, please stop me. I'm looking at the clock, but I don't know where we started at. So, but let's talk about that. So the first of the Quran to have been revealed is what? Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. Keep going. خلق الإنسان من علق. اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم بالقلم علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم. Okay, let's talk about that. Read in the name of your Lord who is created. Keep going. That's the fifth verse. Keep going. Second verse. That's the fifth verse. You would use it. Good. Okay. Read in the name of your Lord who created. Who created. Good. Who created human being. Good. From a single flock. Okay. Good. From a gathering of flesh. Read, and your Lord is the most generous. The one who is taught by the pen, the one who has taught humanity that which he knew not. This is the very first order to come in the Quran. In order for us to be literate. In order for us to be educated. In order for us to learn and to teach. Jazakallah khairan.
Never thought I would be doing that.
You my clock. In this, we find the Islamic educational model. Now we're going to run through this in about 5 minutes. All right? Before the hanger comes and takes my neck and pulls me off. How does this express the Islamic educational model? Okay. When we come into some information that we want to digest, that we want to absorb, firstly, we read because the order is to read in the first verse, right? That's step 1. 5 steps here. Step 2, the one that has created us from a gathering, from a hanging clump of flesh. Right? We say blood clot, but really it's a gathering of flesh that is attached to the side of the womb that grows out from it, right? Or grows within it, we should say. Okay, good. So if we're speaking about education, what would a gathering of flesh clinging to a womb have to do with education? In literacy, in learning. Because that's what the first verse says, right? Read in the name of your Lord who's created. Be literate in the name of your Lord who's created. Then we go to inside of the womb. What does this have to do with that? Okay. Exactly what you're doing now. It's making you contemplate. So then you read the information first. Step 1. Step 2, you then reflect on what you have read. Okay? Step 3, Iqra wa rabbuka al-akram. Read and your Lord is the most generous. Then you read it again. الذي علم بالقلم, the one who was taught by the pen. Then you document what you have gathered from reading it, then reflecting, and then reading it again. Now you're documenting it. And as you are documenting it, this creates an ability that makes humanity unique, where we can now build on each other's thoughts because we are documenting them. And by way of that, Allah teaches the human being that which he knew not. Wow. That's the Islamic education model. Okay? 2 more points to go with our 3 minutes left or so. With regards to education. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam stated, "Khayrukum min ta'allama al-Qur'an wa 'allama." The best of you are those who have learned the Quran and teach it to others. In Islam, all source of spiritual knowledge is rooted in the Quran. Every field of study, whether it's speaking to Aqidah, theology and spirituality, whether we are speaking to Tawheed, whether we are speaking to fiqh, whether speaking to law and jurisprudence, whether we're speaking to hadith, prophetic tradition, all of it is sourced in the Quran and branches off from it. Okay? And those fields that we mentioned have subsets that umbrella beneath them. Learning these things, what is the ruling on in Islam? Learning religious academics, right? Language, and you have legal theory, usul fiqh, you have maqasid al-sharia, the goals of the sharia, you have mustalah hadith, the nomenclature of prophetic tradition, you have hadith literature, you have all these things that are out there, right? What's the ruling on learning it? Is it obligatory? Is it optimal, recommended to do? Is it neutral? Is it something that is discouraged? Is it something that is unlawful? What is it? Is it something that's wajib? Is it something that is mustahab? Is it something that is mubah, makruh? Is it mahdhur? Right? Is it unlawful? Haram? Well, depending on where you're at in the U.S., haram. Where does it fall? What do we think? Learning religious academics.
If that was a command, was that command from Iqra, then it would be obligatory.
Obligatory. Okay, good. Well, it is specifically obligatory upon the individual for the individual to learn what the individual needs to know to practice his or her deen, to practice his or her religion. That may differ from person to person. But what you need to know in order to practice your faith correctly, then that is obligatory upon you. Okay? What goes beyond that becomes a communal obligation. All right? A communal obligation meaning so long as enough of the people have knowledge of it, then the sin of it falls off of everyone else. But if no one has knowledge of those things, the sin falls on everybody. So there has to be somebody, some people that are knowledgeable about these things. And we're saying this as an American people that are in need of religious academic knowledge. Last point, with the 30 seconds we have. I got 1 minute? Okay, double 30 seconds. When it comes to secular knowledge, on an occasion, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as we mentioned that the date economy was a large part of the economics of Medina at the time. It's one of the ways they were getting their money, right? Dates and gold. So they would plant dates and the date trees and harvest them, and they would sell them, and they would trade them, do what they did. On an occasion, they're pollinating the date palm trees, and the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam comes by and he sees what they're doing. He gives some advice to them, some direction of what he thinks it should be. It's the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They do it. They lose the crop. They go back to the Messenger. You told us. He says to them, "Antum a'lam bi umuri dunyakum." you all are more knowledgeable concerning your worldly affairs. Okay? Now, this shows us that we should also have secular knowledge along with our religious knowledge. Right? We're not lopsided here. We're balanced. Okay? What is the ruling on attaining secular knowledge? You said what?
Beneficial.
Beneficial?
As long as it doesn't interfere with you practicing your religion.
As long as it doesn't interfere with you practicing your religion. Okay. All right. About to run out of time. I got to work with it. So give me a ruling. Secular knowledge. So we're speaking about becoming an electrician, learning HVAC, being an engineer, being a person that works in the health field, knowing Western law or American law, right? Being a lawyer, being a judge, these things, right? IT, information technology. What's the ruling on learning these things? Is it wajib, mustahab, mubah, makruh, or mahdhur? Haram. Huh. Which one is it?
It'll be wajib, still be wajib.
Still obligatory?
Yes, because we still need that information within the community.
We still need that information within the community. Do we need all of it? Not all of it? You need some of it? It depends on what you need to provide for your family. Okay. Okay, that's your family. What about the Muslims at large?
It would still be communal.
Still communal. Okay. Now, based on what the Muslims themselves need in their society, in that time, and in that place, it becomes a communal obligation upon the Muslim to attain that secular knowledge. And depending on the circumstance, it can become an individualized obligation upon an individual if the situation necessitates that. Okay? Okay. So, as a man, in the art of manliness, we also seek to educate ourselves and others in religious knowledge and in secular knowledge based on what we are in need of, what is most relative to us, and assuring that we are fulfilling the obligation that the Lord has placed upon us, be it a communal obligation or an individual obligation. I'm over my time. هذا فالله أعلم وصلى الله على محمد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
You got time for question and answer?
We're going to call the adhan now, and
Okay.
in between the adhan and the iqama, if there's anyone that has any questions, inshallah, then, but we'll leave some time at the end of the program tonight, inshallah, for those who want to ask questions.
Allahu Akbar.